My future is unlimited. Hi, we're back. It's time to try defying gravity. For you and I, defying gravity. They'll never bring us down. Let me tell you something. We are back with Storytime with Chris After Dark. Hi, lovelies. Hey, what's going on? As I always say, you don't have to watch these videos when they go live. You're more than welcome to watch them in your downtime, nap time, max relax and chillaxing time, in between time, mean time, scheme time, study time, break time, CP time. Anytime that you want to hear a highly animated voice bringing wonderful stories of magic, fantasy, science fiction, adventure, and music, and many, many more in between. So I'll say it again. If you're not 18 and older, you should not be watching this particular video. Storytime with Chris After Dark has been on a bit of a hiatus the last couple of weeks because life has been lifing, and that just happens for us as adults, and it's just life. We roll with it. We don't fall apart. So I am back, and I will try to do my best to make sure I'm consistent every Friday to do this. We are going to get through Wicked and move on to other mature works as time goes on. If you ever have any suggestions, please personally message me on Instagram or on my Facebook or even on here on YouTube. Just shoot me a comment or a message. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started, but I'm going to continue to warn you, if you are not 18 and older, you should not be watching this video. There are plenty of other videos for my younger viewers. Please enjoy those, but this is strictly for the adults. This is my final warning. If you are not 18 and older, don't watch this video. Oh. Shout out to my stylist, Kafisala. She is amazing. And this is a retwist after 4.5 months of not having one. And she got me all the way together. Shout out to Sid's Barbershop. Shout out to Salsa Tings. Now, without further ado, we're going to go ahead, turn our music up, get our mind right, and let's get into it. Chapter 5. 2 weeks before Briscoe Hall reconvened for the new semester, Averick returned from his home, the seat of the Margrave of Ten Meadows. He was bronzed with the summer leisure and eager for fun. He mocked Bach for having struck up friendships with boys from Three Queens. And under other circumstances, Bach would probably have let his new alliance with Croup and Tibbet lapse. But they were all engaged in Dr. Dillamond's research now, and Bach just put up with Averick's taunting. Elphaba remarked one day that she had a letter from Galinda away with her friends at Lake Corge. Can you believe it? She proposed I take a coach and come visit for a weekend, said Elphaba. She must really be bored out of her mind with those society girls. But she's society herself. How could she be bored? Asked Bach. Don't ask me to explain the nuances of that circle, said Elphaba, but I suspect that our Miss Galinda is quite as society as she makes out. Well, Elfie, when are you going? Asked Bach. Never, said Elphaba. This work is too important. Let me see the letter. I don't have it. Bring it to me. What are you on about? Maybe she needs you. She always seems to need you. She needs me? Elphaba laughed coarsely, loudly. Well, I know you're besotted and I feel somewhat responsible. I'll show you the letter next week. And I'm not going to go just to give it you a vicarious thrill, Bach, friend or no friend. The next week she unfolded the letter. My dear Miss Elphaba, I am bade to write you by my hostesses, the Mrs. Fanny of Fan Hall and Shin Shin of the Minkos clan. We are having a lovely summer at Lake Corge. The air is calm and sweet, and all is as pleasant as anything. If you'd like to visit us for 3 or 4 days before school begins, we know you've been hard at work all summer, and so a little change. If you would like to come, no need to write if you would like to visit. Just arrive by coach at Neverdale and come by foot or hire a hansom cab. It's just a mile or 2 by the bridge. The house is dear, covered in roses and ivy. It's called the Caprice in the Pines. Who wouldn't love it here? I do hope you'll come. I do have very especially hope so for reasons I dare not write. I cannot advise you as to chaperone, as Alma Clutch is already here, and so is Alma Clip and Alma Vimp. You can decide. We hope for long hours of amusing conversation. Forever your loving friend, Miss Galinda of the Arduenas of the Upland, 33 High Summer Midday at Caprice in the Pines. But you must go, Bach cried. Look how she writes to you. She writes like someone who doesn't write very often, Elphaba observed. I do hope you can come, she says. She needs you, Elfie. I insist that you go. Oh, you do? Why don't you go then, said Elphaba. I hardly can go without having been invited. Well, that's easy enough. I'll write and tell her to invite you. Elphaba reached for a pencil in her pocket. Don't patronize me, Miss Elphaba, said Bach sternly. This must be taken seriously. You are lovesick and deluded, said Elphaba, and I don't like you retreating back to Miss Elphaba to punish me for disagreeing with you. Besides, I can't go. I have no chaperone. I'll be your chaperone. Ha! As if Madame Morrible would allow that. Well, how about... Bach tossed it around. How about my friend Averick? He's the son of a Margrave. He's spotless by virtue of his station. Even Madame Morrible would quail before a Margrave's son. Madame Morrible wouldn't quail before a hurricane. Foreshadowing. Besides, have you no concern for me? I don't feel like traveling with this Averick. Elfie, said Bach, you owe me. I've been helping you out all summer, and I've had Croup and Tibbet helping too. Now you have to pay me back. You ask Dr. Dillman for a few days off, and I'll ask Averick, who's bursting to do something. The 3 of us will go to Lake Corge. Averick and I will rent a room in an inn, and we'll stay a very short time, just long enough to make sure that Miss Galinda is all right. It's you I'm worried about, not her, said Elphaba, and Bach could see that he had won. Madame Morrible would not release Elphaba in the care of Averick. Your dear father would never forgive me, she said, but I'm not the horrible Morrible you think of me. Oh yes, I know your little pet names for me, Miss Elphaba. Amusing and juvenile, I'm concerned for your welfare, and with all your hard work all summer, I see that you have grown, shall we say, verdigrigian? So I shall make a compromise proposal, provided that you could convince Master Averick and Master Bach to travel with you, and my own little grammatic, who I will loan in your care and to care for you. I shall permit your little summer fun. Elphaba, Bach, and Averick rode in the coach, and Grammatic was made to ride on top with the luggage. Grammatic, by the way, is a TikTok being. So TikToks in the world of Oz, which that term was made, this is not just from this novel, TikTok creatures are from the 1920s and 30s, from the original Oz book series. Fun fact, we will definitely do at some point one day, we probably will read all of the Oz books at some point on this channel, especially The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, definitely The Marvelous Land of Oz, which is the sequel, and then The Patchwork Girl of Oz, TikTok of Oz, and probably oh yeah, definitely the Tin Woodman of Oz. Excuse me. So TikTok creatures are basically mechanical beings that literally have to be wound up. They can think for themselves, they don't easily tire. As long as their gears are working, they can do anything. All of them have their different functions. There's TikTok dogs, TikTok cats, TikTok men and women. There's all sorts of beings. And there's one particular being known as TikTok that specifically hails from The Road to Oz, which is a great book as well. But besides that, let's get back to the story. Elphaba met Bach's eyes from time to time grimacing, but she ignored Averick, to whom she had taken an instant dislike. When he had finished with the pages of his racing form, Averick teased Bach about this trip. I should have known when I left for the summer that you were mooning about in the throes of love. You developed this serious set of chin. It misled me. I thought it was consumption at least. You should have come out with me that night before I left. A visit to the philosophy club would have just what the doctor ordered. Bach was mortified to have such a dive mentioned in the presence of a female, but Elphaba seemed to take no offense. Perhaps she didn't know what it was. He tried to steer Averick away from the subject. You don't know Miss Galinda, but you will find her charming, he said. I guarantee that. And she'll probably find you charming, he thought, a little bit late in the day, but he was even willing to leave with that, if it was the price of helping Galinda out of a tricky situation. Averick was regarding Elphaba with contempt. Miss Elphaba, he said formally, does your name imply any elf blood in your background? Huh, what a novel idea, said Elphaba. If there were, I suppose my limbs would be as brittle as uncooked pasta and come apart with the slightest of pressure. Would you care to apply some force? She proffered a forearm, green as a spring limeberry. Do, I beg you, so we can settle this question once and for all. We should conclude that the relative force you need to break my arm, as opposed to other arms you have broken, is proportionate to the relative amount of human versus elven blood in my veins. I certainly will not touch you, said Averick, managing to say many things at once. The elf in the self regrets, said Elphaba. Were you to have dismembered me, I might have posted back to Shiz, and small pieces have been spared the tedium of this forced holiday, and this company. Oh, Elfie, Bach sighed, this isn't a good start, you know. I think it's swell, said Averick, glaring. I didn't think friendship required this much, snapped Elphaba to Bach. I was better off before. It was late afternoon by the time they arrived in Neverdale and settled in the inn and made their way by foot along the lake to Caprice in the Pines. Two older women were in the sunlight by the portico, shelling string beans and wrist wrenchers. The one Bach recognized was Alma Clutch, Galinda's chaperone. The other must be the minder of Miss Chinchin and Miss Fanet. They stared at the sight of the procession coming up the drive, and Alma Clutch leaned forward, the string beans spilling out of her lap. Well, I never, she said as they drew near. It's Miss Elfie herself. My uncle's whiskers, I never did. She pulled herself to her feet and clasped Elphaba into her arms. Elphaba stood as stiff as a plastered figure. Give us a minute to be catching our breaths, duckies, said Alma Clutch. Whatever in the blameless heaven are you doing here, Miss Elphaba? It don't seem possible. I have been invited by Miss Galinda, said Elphaba, and my fellow travelers here insisted they wanted to accompany me, so I find myself compelled to accept. I know nothing of this, said Alma Clutch. Miss Elphaba, let me take that heavy reticule and find you something clean to put on. You must be frayed from the voyage. You gentlemen will be staying in the village, of course, but for now the girls are in the summer house at the edge of the lake. The travelers made their way along a path interrupted with stone steps at the steeper parts. Grommatic took longer at steps and was left behind, and no one was inclined to stay and lend a hand to a figure with such a hard skin and clockwork thoughts. Skirting the final growth of holly-fly bushes, they came upon the gazebo. It was a skeleton house of unstripped logs, 6 sides open to the breezes, with a fretwork of arabesquing twigs and Lake Corge, a mighty field of blue beyond. The girls were sitting on steps and in wicker chairs, and Alma Clutch was lost in some small work involving 3 needles and many colors of thread. Miss Galinda, broke out Bach, needing his to be the first voice heard. The girls raised their heads. In effervescent summer frocks, free of hoops and bustles, they looked like birds about to scatter. Holy terror, said Galinda, her jaw dropping. What are you doing here? I'm not decent, shrieked Shin-Shin, drawing attention to her unshod feet and pale, exposed ankles. Fene bit one corner of her lip and tried to revise her smirk into a smile of welcome. I'm not staying for long, said Elphaba. By the way, girls, this is Master Averick, the Margrave descending from Ten Meadows, Gillikin, and this is Master Bach from Munchkinland. They're both at Briscoe Hall. Master Averick, as if you can't tell by the lovesick expression of Bach's face, this is Miss Galinda of the Arduenas and Miss Shinchin and Miss Fanet, who can outline their own pedigrees perfectly well. But how enchanting and how haughty, said Miss Shinchin. Miss Elphaba, who never gives us the time of day, you've redeemed yourself for all time by this pleasant surprise. How do you do, gentlemen? But, stammered Galinda, but why are you here? What's wrong? I am here because I stupidly mentioned your invitation to Master Bach, who saw it as a sign for the unnamed god that we should visit. But at this, Fene could control herself no longer and fell on the floor of the gazebo, writhing in laughter. What? Said Shinshin. What? But what invitation are you talking about? Asked Galinda. I don't need to show you, said Elphaba. For the first time since Bach had known her, she looked confused. Surely I don't need to bring it out. I believe I have been set up to be mortified, said Galinda, glaring at the helpless Fene. I am being humiliated for sport. This is not funny, Miss Fene. I have half a mind to kick you. Just then, Grommatic made it around the corner of the hollyfly bush. The sight of the stupid copper thing teetering on the edge of a stone step made Shinshin collapse against a column and joined Fene in uncontrollable laughter. Even Alma Clip smiled to herself as she began to put away her materials. But what is going on? Said Elphaba. Were you born to plague me? Galinda said tearfully to her roommate. Did I ask for your association? Don't, said Bach. Don't. Miss Galinda, please don't say another word. You're upset. I wrote the letter! Heaved Fene between her gales of laughter. Averick began to chuckle and Elphaba's eyes went wide and a little unfocused. You mean you didn't write to invite me to visit here? Said Elphaba to Galinda. Oh dear, no, I did not, said Galinda in her anger. She was beginning to regain some control, even though Bach guessed damage had been done for good. My darling Miss Elphaba, I wouldn't have dreamed of exposing you to such thoughtless cruelties as these girls perpetrated on each other and on me for sheer amusement. Besides, you have no place in a setting like this. But I've been invited, said Elphaba. Miss Fene, you wrote that letter instead of Miss Galinda. You hate it all, chortled Fene. Well, this is your home, and I accept your invitation, even if it was written under false pretenses, Elphaba said, her voice evenly matter-of-fact as she stared into Miss Fene's narrowed eyes. I'll go up and unpack my bags. She strode away. Only Grommatic followed. The air went stale with things unsaid. By and by, Fene's hysteria grew quieter, and the mere snorting and wheezed, and then grew still, lying vaporishly and unkempt on the flagstone floor of the gazebo. Well, you all needn't pierce me with your sniffy attitudes, she said at last. It was a joke. Sometimes certain jokes are not that funny. Especially when you, lying on people. It's not cool. Is it gonna take me? Yeah, it's gonna take me all the way to the end. Okay, so we're not, yeah, that'll be a good spot. Whoa, time. Got you. Elphaba stayed in her room for a day. Galinda came and went with dinner. On occasion, she would stay for a few minutes, so the boys took to swimming and rowing on the lake with the girls. Bach tried to fan himself an interest in Shinshin or Fene, who certainly were coquettish enough, thank you, but they both seemed besotted with Averick. At last, Bach cornered Galinda on the porch and pleaded with her to talk to him. She agreed, a measure of her demure demeanor returning, and they sat a short distance apart on a swing. I suppose I'm to blame for not seeing through that ruse, said Bach. Elfie wasn't inclined to accept that invitation. I made her. What is this Elfie? Said Galinda. Where is propriety gone this summer? I ask you. We've become friends. Well, I can promise to have gathered that. Why did you make her accept an invitation? Did you know I never write such a thing? How should I know that? You're her roomie. By executive order of Madame Morrible. Not by choice. I care to have that remembered. I didn't know. You seem to get along. It's really, sharp, don't you think? You know black. Is this year's pink? You deserve each other, this hat and you. You're both so smart. You deserve each other, so... Nah. So here, out of the goodness of my heart. There we go. She sniffed and curled a lip, but it seemed to be a remark to herself. Bach continued, "If you've been woefully humiliated, why don't you leave?"
"Perhaps I shall," she said. "I'm considering. Elphaba says that to leave is to admit defeat. Yet if she comes out of her hiding and begins to trip along with the rest of us, of you and me, the joke will be unbearable."
"They don't like her," she explained. "Well, neither do you, I'd say," said Bach in an explosive whisper.
"It's different. I have a right and a reason," she retorted. "I am forced to put up with her, and all because my stupid Alma stepped on a rusty nail in the railway station in Frodica and missed the orientation. My whole academic career up in smoke because of my Alma's carelessness. When I'm a sorcerer, I'll have my revenge on her for that."
Foreshadowing. "You could say that Elphaba brought us together," said Bach softly. "I'm closer to her, and so I'm closer to you." Galinda seemed to give up. She leaned her head back on the velvet cushions of the swing and said,
"Bach, you know, despite myself, I think you're a little sweet. You're a little sweet, and you're a little charming, and you're a little maddening, and you're a little habit-forming."
Bach held his breath.
"But you're little," she concluded. "You're a munchkin, for goodness sakes."
He kissed her, he kissed her, he kissed her, little by little by little. The next day, Elphaba, Galinda, Bach, and Grabatic, and of course Alma Clutch, made the 6-hour trip back to Shiz with fewer than a dozen remarks among them. Averick stayed behind to disport himself with Fanny and Shenshin. The pestering rain took up at the skirts of Shiz, and the august facades of Crage Hall and Briscoe Hall were nearly obliterated with mist by the time they were at last home. Chapter 6. Bach didn't have time or inclination to remark on his romance when he saw Croup and Tibbet. The rhino librarian, having paid scant attention to the boys or their progress all summer, had suddenly cottoned on to how little had been achieved and was all rheumatic huffs and watchful eyes. The boys chattered little. They brushed and cleaned volume and rubbed finfoot oil on leather bindings and polished brass clasps. Only a few days left of this tedium. One afternoon, Bach left his eye drift down to the codex he was handling. Usually, he worked without attention to the subject matter of the materials, but his eye was drawn to the bright red paint applied in the illustration. It was a picture, maybe 400 or 500 years old, of a Cumbric witch. Some monk's visionary zeal or anxiety about magic had inspired his brush. The witch stood on an isthmus connecting two rocky lands, and on either side of her stretched patches of cerulean blue sea with white-lipped waves of astonishing vigor and particularity. The witch held in her hands a beast of unrecognizable species, though it was clearly drowned or nearly drowned. She cradled it in an arm that, without attention to actual skeletal flexibility, lovingly encircled the beast's wet, spiked-furred back. With her other hand, she was freeing a breast from her robe, offering suck to the creature. Her expression was hard to read, or had the monk's hand smudged or age and grime bestowed a fumato sympathy. She was nearly motherly with miserable child. Her look was inward or sad or something. But her feet didn't match her expression, for they were planted on the narrow strand with prehensile grip, apparent even through the silver-colored shoes, whose cloth of the realm brilliance had first caught Bach's eye. Furthermore, the feet were turned out at 90-degree angles to the shins. They showed in profile as mirror images, heels clicked together and toes pointing in opposite directions like a stance in ballet. The gown was a hazy dawn blue. He guessed by the jeweled tones of the work that the document hadn't been opened in centuries. Dramatically or theologically, this image seems sort of a hybrid of the creation myths of the animals. Here with the flood waters, whether they derived from legends of Lurleen or the unnamed god, whether they were rising or sinking, was the cumbered witch interfering with or accomplishing the ordained fate of the beasts? Though in a script too crabbed and archaic for Bach to decipher, perhaps this document supported the fable of a cumbric witch spell that gave the animals the gifts of speech, memory, and remorse. Perhaps it merely refuted it, but glowingly. Anyway, you looked at it, there was the syncretism of myth's happy appetite to engorge on narrative strains. Maybe this painting was the suggestion of some alarmed monk that the animals received their strength through yet another sort of baptism by nursing at the teat of the cumbric witch? inducted through the milk of the witch? Such analysis wasn't his strong point. He had a hard enough time with the nutrients and common pests of barley. He should do the unthinkable and deliver this actual scroll to Dr. Dillamond. It would be valuable to know about. Or maybe he thought as he hurried to meet Elphaba, the thing safely smuggled into the deep pocket of his cape and out of the Three Queens library. Maybe the witch wasn't feeding the drenched animal, but killing it, sacrificing it to stay the floods. Art was way beyond him. He had run into Amma Clutch in the bazaar and begged her to deliver a note to Elphaba. The good woman seemed more sympathetic than usual to him. Was Galinda singing his praises in the privacy of her room? It was his first time seeing the funny green jumping beans since arriving back in Shiz, and there she was on time, arriving at the cafe as requested, in a gray ghost of a dress with a knitted overall fraying at the sleeves and a man's umbrella, big and black and lance-like when rolled up. Elphaba sat down with a graceless frump and examined the scroll. She looked at it more closely than she would bring herself to look at Bach, but she listened at his exegesis and thought it feeble. What prevents this from being the fairy queen Lurline? She asked. Well, the accoutrements of glamour are missing. I mean, the golden nimbus of hair, the elegance, the transparent wings, the wand. Those silver shoes are pretty gaudy. She munched on a dry biscuit. It doesn't look like a portrait of determination or, what do I mean, Genesis. It looks reactive rather than proactive. That figure is at the very least confused, don't you think? You've been hanging around Croup and Tibbet too long. Go back to your barley, she said, pocketing the thing. You're getting vague and artsy, but I'll give it to Dr. Dillamond. I'll tell you, he keeps making breakthroughs. This business of opposing lenses has opened up a whole new world of corpuscular architecture. He let me look once, but I couldn't make out much except for stress and bias, color and pulse. He's very excited. The problem I see now is getting him to stop. I think he's on the verge of founding a whole new branch of knowledge, and every day's findings provoke 100 new questions. Clinical, theoretical, hypothetical, empirical, even ontological, I guess. He's been staying up late at night at the labs. We can see his lights on when we pull the drapes at night. Well, does he need anything from us? I only have 2 days left in that library and then school starts. I can't get him to focus. I think he's just putting together what he's got. How about Galinda then? He said. If we're done with academic espionage for the time being, how is she? Does she ask for me? Elphaba allowed herself to look at Bach. No. Galinda really hasn't said anything about you. To give you hope you don't deserve, I should add she's hardly said anything to me at all either. She's in a heavy sulk. When will I see her again? Doesn't mean that much to you, she smiled wanly. Bach, does she really mean that much to you? She is my world, he answered. Your world is too small if she is. You can't criticize the size of a world. I can't help it, and I can't stop it, and I can't deny it. I should say you look silly, she said, draining the last drops of lukewarm tea from her cup. I should say you'll look back on this summer and cringe. She may be lovely, Bach. No. She is lovely, I agree. But you're worth a dozen of her. At this shocked expression, she threw up her hands. Not to me. I don't mean me. She gathered her things in a hurry and rushed out, knocking the spittoon over in a clatter, slicing her big umbrella right through someone's newspaper. She didn't look both ways as she lunged across Railway Square and was nearly mowed down by an old ox on a cumbersome tricycle. Chapter 7. The next time Bach saw Elphaba and Galinda, all thoughts of romance fled. It was in the small triangular park outside the gate of Crage Hall. He had been just happening by once again, this time with Averick in tow. The gates had opened and Amma Vimp had come flouncing out, face white and nose dripping, and a flurry of girls poured out after her. Among them were Elphaba, Galinda, and Shinshin, and Fene, and Milla. Free of their walls, the girls huddled in chattering circles or stood beneath the trees in shock, or hugged each other and wailed and wiped each other's eyes. Bach and Averick hurried up to their friends. Elphaba had her shoulders high like a cat's bony yoke, and hers was the only dry face. She stayed arm's length away from Galinda and the others. Bach longed to take Galinda in her arms, but she did look at him more than once before diving her face into Milla's tech fur collar. "What is it? What has happened?" said Averick. "Miss Shenshin, Miss Fede." "It's too horrible," they cried, and Galinda nodded, and her nose ran messily along the shoulder seam of Milla's blouse. "The police are there and a doctor, but it seems to be—" "What?" said Bach and turned to Elphaba. "Elfie, what is it? What?" "They found out," she said. Her eyes were glazed like old Shizian porcelain. "Somehow the bastards found out." The gate creaked once again, and the petals of early autumn vine flowers, blue and purple, came dancing over the college wall. They hung and stepped like butterflies and fell slowly as 3 caped policemen and a doctor in a dark cape emerged carrying a stretcher. A red blanket had covered the patient, but the wind had tossed the petals, caught a quarter of the blanket, and pulled it back in a triangular fold. The girls all shrieked, and Amma Vimp ran forward to tuck the blanket down, but in the sunlight, and all had looked out and seen the twisted shoulders and back-thrown head of Dr. Dillamond. His throat was still knotted with congealed ropes of black blood where it had been slit as thoroughly as if it wandered into an arbiter. Bach sat down, disgusted, alarmed, hoping he had not seen death, just a horrible treatable wound, but the police and doctor weren't hurrying. There was no reason to hurry now. Bach fell back against the wall, and Averick, who had never seen the goat before, held Bach's hands tightly with one hand and covered his own face with the other. Before long, Galinda and Elphaba sank down beside him, and there was some weeping, some long weeping, before words could be spoken. At last, Galinda told the story.
"We went to bed last night, and Alma Clutch got up to pull the drapes close, as she does. And she looks down and says almost to herself, 'Well, there's the lights on. Dr. Goat is at it again.' And she peers a little closer down the yard and says, 'Well, now isn't that funny?' And I don't pay any attention. I'm just sitting there staring. But Elphaba says, 'What's funny, Alma Clutch?' And Alma Clutch just pulls the drapes very tightly and says in a funny voice, 'Oh, nothing, my ducks. I'll just step down to check and make sure everything's all right, as long as you girls are abed.' She says good night, and she leaves. And I don't know if she goes down there or what, but we both fall asleep, and in the morning, she isn't there with the tea. She always gets the tea. She always does."
Galinda gave herself to tears, sinking and then raising herself to her knees and trying to tear her black silk gown with the white epaulets and the white bobbing. Elphaba, dried-eyed as a desert stone, continued. "We waited until breakfast. But then when we went to Madame Morrible," said Elphaba, "and told her that we didn't know where Alma Clutch was, and Madame Morrible said that Alma Clutch had had a relapse during the night and was recovering in the infirmary. She wouldn't let us in to see her at first, but then when Dr. Dillamond didn't show up for our first lecture of the semester, we wandered over there and just pushed our way in. Alma Clutch was in a hospital bed. Her face looked funny, like the last pancake of the batch, the way it goes all wrong. We said, 'Alma Clutch, what has happened to you?' She didn't say anything, even though her eyes were open. She didn't seem to hear us. We thought maybe she was asleep or in shock. But her breathing was regular and her color was good, even though her face seemed awry. Then as we were leaving, she turned and she looked at the bedside table. Next to a medicine bottle and a cup of lemon water, there was a long rusty nail on a silver tray. She reached a shaky hand to the nail and picked it up and held it in her hand tenderly, and she talked to it. She said something like, 'Oh, well, then I know you didn't mean to stab my foot last year. You're only trying to get my attention. That's what misbehavior is all about, just a little extra loving before being asked for. Well, don't you worry, Nail, because I'm going to love you just as much as you need, and after I have a little nap, you can tell me how you came to be holding up the platform of the railway station at Frodica, for it seems quite a leap from your early years as a common hook for a closed-for-the-season sign in that dingy hotel you were talking about.' But Buck could not listen to this blather. He could not take in the story of a live nail while a dead goat was being prayed over by hysterically distraught faculty members. Bach could not listen to the sounds of the prayers for the repose of the animal spirits. He could not watch the departure of the corpse when they trundled it away, for it had been clear with a glimpse of the goat's still face that whatever had given the doctor his enlivening character had already disappeared. And that is where we will end for tonight. They'd have murdered Dr. Dillamont, which they could never... Well, I shouldn't say that. I have said this once, and I will say it again. When Wicked for Good Part 2 comes out this November, which I'm telling you, if they don't give this movie the Oscar for Best Picture and give Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo an Oscar winning, not nomination, a win, baby, they will be robbing these people. Now, granted, there's been some amazing movies thus far that have recently come out and deserve all of the accolades and all the love. One particular movie I'm really excited for that comes out in October is Jennifer Lopez and Diego Luna starring in Kiss of the Spider-Woman. I heard about how it did at the Sundance Film Festival earlier this year, and heard rave reviews about it, saying this movie is the movie of the year, best musical ever. J-Lo, this was her role for her. Like, I'm excited to see it, and I'm excited to start singing all of the songs for that movie. I really want to get the soundtrack, but I don't think it's out yet. But Wicked could totally be adapted as a series if you wanted to adapt the book. The books, I will say, are far different than the musical. The musical kind of condenses certain plots and makes it more PG-13. This story is very rated R. A lot of details that we're going to get into later on, I don't want to spoil anything, do get kind of cut away in regards to the musical, and they're definitely going to do it for the movie. We're going to get the major points of the first book. But John M. Chu, there was a rumor going around that with the success of the second movie, that they were going to go ahead and try to expand on Wicked as a film franchise with other stories. And honestly, with the fact that the Wicked Years is a great award-winning selling book series, and each book, I've read all 4 books, y'all. Each book is a hit. Each book has you on the edge of your feet going, oh Lord, like it's that good, y'all. Like, and if you know, here's the other thing, if you know the Oz books by L. Frank Baum, if you know the lore of that series, that lore is very much ingrained in the Wicked Years, with the second book being Son of a Witch. And I'm not gonna tell you about I can no, we're gonna I'll reveal that when we get to that point in this book. Anyway, then the third book is A Lion Among Men, which is talking about it's a story that mostly features the Cowardly Lion, aka Burr, because he's always afraid. And then the fourth book, which is Out of Oz, which is technically the longest out of the 4 books. And y'all, the reading of that made me cry. Like, it was so good, so awesome, such amazing plot twist. And for me, like, I could totally see them making movies based off of those books, and there's enough plot in there for each one to mix 2.5 hour solid movies with great plot. And it won't be a musical. I mean, if Steven Schwartz wants to do new music based off of the lore of the other books in the Wicked Years, that would be really cool, but I don't see that happening. I believe the best solution would be is if Netflix were to adapt the Wicked Years with John M. Chu directing, and his production team and his costume designer, who was the first black man to ever win Best Costume Design at the Oscars this year. Yes. And Best Production Design was also the win for Wicked. Yes. Which they definitely deserve to give Cynthia Erivo the Best Actress role. And they should have given it to Ariana Grande. But those who won definitely deserved. Zoe Saldana definitely deserved, because she's been working hard all her life. But they could do the first book of Wicked in, like, if you were to do hour-long episodes, do 10 episodes, you could fully encapsulate the first book. Second season would be Son of a Witch. Third season would be Lion Among Men. And then the fourth season would have to be split into 2 parts. It's a huge book. It's a huge story. So you would do like part 1 is 10 episodes. Part 2 would be 8 is what I would imagine. And honestly, that would be the best way to adapt it. Plus, I would love to see them really expand upon like Elphaba in a TV series, and to see that whole story and progression that is really a deep cut. There's just such a beautiful connection that Galinda and Elphaba have throughout the books, and it's great. It's great. Enough of that. Have a great night. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. I personally believe